Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
That is right, Andrew. This is the Midnight Ocean Radio Show and a podcast. I am your host, Jeff Norton. It is Monday, the 17th. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I know I did. Man, filled the shows. Holy smokes. And for those that are out there, the members of the Midnight Listeners group, I do apologize. We're having some issues with allowing you guys to have access to the shows. There's not a private, there's an unlisted, but what happens is what we found out is that is actually an issue security-wise. So we're working through those. We will get those resolved. And I've been told by my video experts that when we install our new video system, that's right, we're going to install a new video system here, we will be able to resolve that. And I do apologize. So we did a weekend full of shows to get them in the bucket, to get them queued and everything. You know, I also want to tell you guys, you know, because of a generous donation by Scott Limriel, tonight's show is brought to you. And, well, I mean, all shows. We every once in a while, we do reach out to individuals, to friends, family, things of that nature to help fund, because, you know, our mission is always been to keep this free and as a free media source. And every once in a while, look, every once in a while we need help. Our operating costs are minimum, but we still have operating costs between the hosting, the websites, the audio, through Spreaker. There's things that are associated there. The hosting, like I said, the hosting and such. And so, yeah. So every once in a while, we do have people that, will help us out. And I just want to let you know that, Scott Limriel, he's a guest. He was a guest on the show, and he believes in our mission, and he is helping to support that mission of bringing non-mainstream ideas to the mainstream. So hats off to Scott. And, hey, take a look at his website. He actually has a new post up there. If you go to Parallel Time, that's ParallelTime.com. That's paralleltime.com. He has a new video that he has produced, and that's actually up on his new site as well. So hats off. Thank you, Scott. And, I'll let you guys know there's other guys too that are contributing and helping us get this word out. It's a community. It's a community. And, if you want to contribute or whatever, just reach out to me. Anything is good. Anything will help. We are committed to providing this product, this service to you guys, and we'll continue to do it. But it does help. Right now it's all being funded by the generosity of guys like Scott and some other individuals who we will name later on, but, and mainly Sandy and myself. And, the goal is to move into this full time. I am, looking at doing this. So you guys know, we spend about 8 hours a day doing a real job. And then we spend another 4 hours doing this show. And then preparing for this show takes about 4 to 6 hours between everything. So that tells you the amount of time. Sleep is very critical in the Norton household. And you just got to budget. It's like anything else. You just got to plan and budget. But what does take a lot of the weight off of us is knowing that the operation is funded for the next couple months. And I appreciate that. But get out there and look at Scott Limriel's website, Parallel Time, and take a look. Great site. And you can actually link to it. Just type in Scott. If you go out to the midnightocean.com, type in Scott in the search bar, and you'll see the show that he was on. So hats off. Hey, and I also want to give a shout out to Brendan of Liver Medic. Hey, Brendan, I got the I don't want to call it medicine. I got the herbs that you sent. So you guys don't think we're, special herbs and stuff. So I started taking those today from Liver Medic, and I've been doing a lot of research, and, it's just amazing. We spoke with Brendan last week about, liver health, and it was just incredible. The wealth of information. And also it's refreshing to know that he is awake. That is just so cool to know that Brendan is awake and gets it. And so yeah, Brendan, I did get the Liver Medic. I started my first dose today. And what we're going to do, guys, for the listeners out there, I don't endorse a product unless I actually take it. I'll be your guinea pig. I'll be your blind study. And so, throughout the week, as I'm taking these in the show, I'll kind of report, the things that are happening. And, I know without a doubt it's going to work because I've been reading a lot since one of the things I do educate myself. It doesn't matter what product it is. I do educate myself, and, it's just amazing. The candida, fungus that grows. It's natural. And there's a spit test. So you guys, if you want to see, and I failed it miserably today. So if you want to know candida is a fungus that basically it grows on you normally. It's a normal fungus. And Scott, I never knew this, but Brandon shared that with us the other day, and I had no clue what it was, and he said that's what leads to your sugar, got it, those cravings, those mass cravings. And there are signs and symptomology that you can do, and they call it the spit test. And basically you spit in a glass of water, and you'll actually see the fungus strands. It's crazy. And I did it today, and oh my gosh, I was shocked. I was mortified by what I saw. So I am taking, he has given me actually there's 3. I'm taking the Candida complex to help me with that. And there's also I'll know pretty quick if it's working, and I'll report to you the Serapetese. I can't pronounce it. So I got that. And then of course the heptamen, which is for the liver to help clean out the liver. So I'll let you guys know. I'll let you. I'm a great experiment for this stuff because I'll call it as I see it. I don't have any problem. I don't have any problem telling you. But I've done some research, and I will tell you, Liver Medic, I've done the research on them as well. And, obviously Brendan was a guest, and, I want to make sure I don't want to become another one of those shows that pushes supplements, and we all know who they are. They do but yeah, if I find a great product that's going to help you, that helps me, I'm going to pass it on. I'm going to pass it on. It'd be selfish if I didn't. So Brendan, thank you of Liver Medic for sharing that with us. So tonight it's going to be a hybrid show. And when I mean hybrid, we have a very special guest joining us. His name is Bob Fletcher. And for those that don't know, let me give you guys a little bit of history about Mr. Fletcher. He's going to go into his history detailed. And when I say hybrid, yes, it is a recorded interview. Now, I'm going to be in the chat room. This is going to be cool because I actually get to sit back and listen to the show like you guys do as listeners. The other thing that's going to be really neat is, let me turn my headset down a little bit. The other thing that's really neat is I'll be able to participate with you in the chat room a little bit more than what I've done in the past and between breaks and stuff. So this is a recorded interview in its entirety that we had to do. Now, there's 2 reasons why we had to record it. One is the obvious. Bob is still actively investigating the government. And we're going to talk about that. You're going to hear that in his interview. So he's going to talk about his relationship in the Iran-Contra, how he got involved in that. He's going to talk about the assassination. And I am now of the belief that Congressman Sonny Bono was assassinated by individuals within the government. He's going to be talking about weaponry that has been deployed against him and other individuals. And, I had, what was really cool about this, doing this research or this show pre doing this show, is they have given me the ability to vet his claims, because I think it's very serious. Now, one of the things I did look up, we're going to talk about a high energy weapon that was used against him. And I did the research, and you know what? Darn it. I want to say another word, but this is we want to keep it family. It's real. Yeah. These microwave guns are actually real. And the way that Bob describes it, and I'm going to let him tell you the story, what happened to him, is exactly how these devices work. It's scary stuff. It really is. Don't sleep by your window if you're in the truth movement or whatever. And the other thing is, so then we're going to progress into his newest investigation, and in the last hour, and it is really frightful. It goes along with what we've been talking about Planet X here. There's a reason why there's $3.2 billion missing from the Pentagon budget, and Bob's going to talk about that. And so I wanted to have time to vet the claims, especially when you're getting into more of the New World Order conspiracy. We didn't edit anything out of the interview. The interview is its entirety. We didn't edit anything. It is from the beginning to the end. There is no additions, no deletions, no modifications to it whatsoever. But you have to listen to this story. It is intriguing and fascinating. The second reason why we pre-recorded it is because Bob, when he's on shows, they have issues. I will tell you, we did the show using a burner cell phone. We didn't announce when we were going to do it. We didn't tell anybody. We kind of dropped it out there a little bit, but it was already in the can per se before we truly released it. So that was the other thing that we did that would allow. So Debbie, I see that you're in the chat room. They aren't making it easy. They have blocked listeners. I don't understand. Joey, you can hear us on Spreaker, correct? Make sure your volume's turned up. And Debbie, if your volume's turned on, you wouldn't have heard that anyways. So what we're going to do is we're going to play this interview with Bob Fletcher in its entirety. I will be in the chat room. I'm going to be here with you monitoring it, because who's to say that they don't take the feed down during the show? If they take the feed down. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Joey. If they take the feed down, we will publish the feed directly. What that means is that we will just push it out there in its entirety. And then you guys can listen to it through your iPhone or through your Android device. If you're joining us for the first time on YouTube, I just want to say thank you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. That's important to us. On Facebook, if you're joining us on Facebook Live for the first time, make sure you share the show with your friends and family and all of your groups. Get the word out. This is some scary stuff. He's talking about assassination and the Clintons, and not assassinating the Clintons, but how the Clintons have been involved in assassinations and such. So, this message needs to get out there. And then he talks about what's going on now with the $3.2 billion that was missing from the Pentagon that was announced prior to 9/11, the day before. And of course, if you don't know the history of 9/11 with the airplanes, well, the Department of Defense investigative arm that was investigating the supposed $3.2 billion that was missing was the part of the Pentagon that was blown up. So all the records are gone. And then, of course, the civil FBI investigation was in Building 7. And we all know what happened with that building. Well, we don't know what happened. We just know it was destroyed as well. So that should send up a bunch of red flags for you. Now, the other thing, too, is if you're listening to us on Facebook, you will get disconnected. They're batting 100%. So come on over to YouTube to join us there, or just go to Spreaker. You can go to the midnightocean.com and you can listen to the show directly on Spreaker. Love to have you. Like I said, I will be in the chat room and I will be listening just like a guest, just like the rest of you guys. And I'll be interacting with you. So if you have any questions or whatever, I look forward to it. Tonight's going to be a fun night. I get to actually sit back and listen to the show as a listener. And maybe I might learn something. And it is true. I don't really listen to my shows after I do them just for sanity reasons. So without haste, I just want to go ahead. Now it's going to redo the intro and all that. And we'll just let it run. I will warn you, this is about a 4.5 hour long show. So hopefully you can stay up with us and listen to it in its entirety. If you can't, I understand that as well. So like they always said, let's get the show on the road. The other listeners out there. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first of all, let's do a little housekeeping here. If you're joining us for the very first time, we thank you very much. If you're joining us on YouTube, make sure that you hit that ever most important subscribe button. And if you are joining us on Facebook Live, we'd appreciate it if you would hit the share button and share our videos with others. We have a pretty unique little contest going on there for all of you Facebookers. What we're going to do is the person that shares us the most in a 1 week period, so it starts on Monday and goes through Friday, we will acknowledge that person on the Friday night show, and I will reach out to them personally, and we will get them something in the mail to say, hey, thank you. That's our way of spreading the good cheer. And yeah, it's pretty cool what we got in store for you guys. Now, we also have, I want to make you guys aware of a new site. We have a couple new sites, but the main one I want to point you guys to is Midnight Listener. The Midnight Listener is actually a social media site similar to Facebook, but for our listeners, for the Midnight Listener. So you guys can share whatever you want to share up there. We prefer it be about the shows and the topics that we talk about throughout the day and evening. But that is, open to you guys. It is a Facebook-like page, and we don't censor. We're not going to do that. The only thing is that we do have one rule. We will censor this one rule. No pornography. There's no reason. We don't, on this show, we talk about conspiracy theories, things of that nature. We don't talk about models, bikinis, skimpy-cladded women or men, whatever you're into. So we do ask that. So get out there to Midnight Listener and take a look at that. It will be up and running within the next few days, and we look forward to talking to you guys on that. But yeah, it's an alternative. I've had several people talk about and complain about Facebook and the fact that they don't have a way of communicating without being censored. Well, guess what? You do now. We've heard you loud and clear. So that is what is coming down the pipe. It's called Midnight Listener, midnightlistener.com. And we'll have links to it from the Midnight Ocean. And it, like I said, it's only for our listeners. And it's another way for we can communicate with you, send you gifts, send you all sorts of stuff. We believe in sharing the wealth here at the Midnight Ocean and everything. Wow, what a show we got in store for you. Mr. Bob Fletcher is going to be joining us here in a few seconds. I can't hardly wait. We originally had him scheduled. And I will tell you, I'll admit when there's a conspiracy or something to go on, but last time when we had Bob scheduled, it was my fault. Lack of communication. We were a little bit young in our show, and there was a lot of things that were falling through the cracks. I'm actually glad that it did happen because we were able to resolve a lot of our audio issues, a lot of our technical issues, and things like that. And I wanted to make sure this message that Bob has for us tonight and what we talk about tonight gets out there unabated. That's why we've taken some precautions. We never announced that Bob was coming on the show this time. We made sure that no one knew that Bob was going to be on the show. And we're also doing the show at a time and a place that we normally don't do the show. In other words, this is pre-recorded. I'm going, when this goes live, I will be in the chat room. We will be talking and everything. So, feel free to chat with me about the show. But I will tell you that we've taken precautions because this message needs to get out there unabated. And as you guys know, especially with Midnight Ocean, as we gain in our popularity, we've been having those issues, right? Of the message trying to get blocked. So don't call in. This is a recorded. We did it at a time slot that is completely not normal for us to keep them on their toes. So without further ado, let me get into this. So for those that don't know, Bob he's an investigator concerned with the future of America and doing something about it. After many years as a business professional, Bob became involved in the U.S. government top secret covert arms sales without even knowing it. We're going to get into that. I'm going to let him tell you how that happened, but it does happen, believe it or not. And, I woke up one day and realized I was working on a project that I had no idea I was working on. And, it does. It really is called compartmentalized. And eventually it'll do that. But, what Bob is also known as, after completing a report for Senator Bono, which involves CIA and the drug connection leading back to top U.S. government officials, a tragic death took place. Sonny Bono, a well-known, and as congressman, not senator, but a well-known, skier, in his own right, mysteriously ran into a tree. I don't know if you guys remember those stories, when that happened, and we'll refresh you guys. And tragic. I remember when I heard about it, I was like, what the heck? How do you, I'm a skier. How do you run into a tree at a ski resort? So, we'll talk about that, I'm sure, with Bob and everything. But without further ado, let's bring the man himself onto the show. Hey, Bob, how are you?
I'm, hanging in there, as they say. One foot in front of the other here. As I had mentioned to you previously, I'm getting old. I'm 75, and I've been living under an extreme, disabling medical situation for several years. And to not get corny, I was literally related to the Sonny Bono situation, I believe. I'm pretty positive.
Yeah.
I was radically injured, literally hit in my bed while I was asleep at 1:30 in the morning, and it was 20 years ago. But what it did was exploded my shoulder inside of my body, my arm, and there's no external. No external injury, but internally, my shoulder was blown to pieces, and I've lived with 24-hour pain for 20 years, so wow. It's really been rather difficult.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so much for that. That was part of the whole story.
The whole story. Yeah, yeah. Let's start like all good stories from the beginning.
Okay.
Let's just, and like I said, you've got all the time to talk, so don't feel like you have to rush to get the story, because I think it's very important that people understand where this started, how it developed, and where it's ending, because it's just proof. I get on here and talk about things that are going on in our government. People are starting to become more awake. And this ought to scare a lot of people. So a lot of people are like, how do you get involved into this stuff? And I think your story is paramount in the sense that it's a lot of how a lot of good Americans get involved in a lot of these operations and not even know it. Don't even know that they're unwilling or unknowing participants in these schemes and scams of different agencies. Yeah,
and that's true. In my case, my story is so extraordinary. And as a matter of fact, I just out in front, I'll throw this out. That is back in, I guess it was 97, that period of time, right around, as a matter of fact, when Sonny Bono was murdered. on the ski slopes, someone had gotten a rough draft of a book I was writing, which I've never gotten published yet, and that's a terrible shame, but I've been so busy and so interrupted, et cetera, it's gone without being published at this point in time. Needs a good editor to finalize the thing and then get it out. Hopefully that'll get done. If it doesn't, that's just the way it is. But this rough draft was forwarded to Emilio Estevez, the actor, producer, and of course son of Martin Sheen, and he went completely crazy over it. I mean, he just when he finally tracked me down, and he had looked for me for quite a long time because I had moved a couple of times, but I was not trying to avoid anybody. It's just the way it was. And he wanted to do a movie instantly. Just went crazy. He said his quote literally was that this is the greatest script I've read in 5 years, and he reads them like every week. And it was just basically my story, how I got into this thing, and all of the turmoil that it generated from that starting point. And and as a matter of fact, he was calling me back and forth. I was in Los Angeles at the time. He was in Los Angeles, but out of town doing another motion picture at the time. And we got right up to the point of where it was like, okay, next week let's sit down and put together a contract, and we'll get started with this. And what took place was I never heard from him again. And what had happened was I had sent him what I would call like the last couple chapters of what would have been the book. And in those chapters, it covered Bill Clinton and his extraordinary involvement with narcotics and with smuggling of narcotics and training of mercenaries in Arkansas, and all of that good stuff while he was governor. And without myself thinking and realizing, even applying common sense out in front, it didn't dawn on me that, in fact, Emilio's dad was, in fact, I'm going to use the term, a drinking buddy of Bill Clinton's. So that was the end of it. They somehow internally there in their own family, Martin Sheen had, and this is my obvious assumption, was steered Emilio away from going any farther with the project. And I was so busy. I've been so terribly busy for literally 30 years, bumper to bumper, 24 hours a day with what I've ended up doing, that I didn't even care. I just put it aside and moved forward with what I was doing. But anyhow, it would have been, and Emilio wanted to play myself as the lead role in the film. He was just terribly excited. He had shared it with several other major stars, performers, and they were all just totally freaked out, But so much for that. But that's how I mentioned this out in front. And that's how extraordinarily interesting and amazing my life has ended up being, and not necessarily of anything of my own doing, but pulled into this mess. Here's how it happened. In the early 80s, first off, I had been an entrepreneur. I had been in and out of several amazing, interesting businesses of my own, including an international consulting company where one of my partners was the consulate general for the country of Liberia. His name was Abraham Mosley, and we were putting together huge multi-million-dollar international assistance operation for Liberia, which involved shrimp boats and just all sorts of things, and industries and educational assistance for the children there and everything else. And this was a multi-million-dollar contractual agreement with the government, and within 30 days of we had started some of it, or a good deal of it. We had at least initiated. But within that period of time, the country of Liberia was overthrown. And Liberia had been, in West Africa, had been an extraordinarily stable country for 100 years, actually. One of the few countries that didn't have a lot of that. I mean, I guess it was corrupted like crazy, but they hadn't had that militant takeover situation like so many of them have almost like on a monthly basis. And it was rather a shock, but the bottom line was obviously everything in that business was finished. And not only were the contracts obviously terminated, but the bad guys that overthrew the country terminated just about everybody we had signed contracts with by killing them. So it was a pretty serious situation on the other side of the ocean there. And I mention that because it fits into what's coming up. A short time after that I was just like, boom, that was really devastating. Here I was counting my chickens before they were hatched, thinking about what I was going to do with all the fantastic income we were about to derive. And all of a sudden it was just gone. Boom. I mean, really gone. So I had an idea for a toy. It was a concept that I had seen an old version of it many years ago. It was a magician's prop, actually. And my brother was a magician professionally, and had also the following 25 years from what I'm talking about now, 1983, 84, that period of time. My brother had the most successful retail operations in the magic business in the history of magic. And he just recently passed away after 30 years of having the success, where he actually had magic shops, like little kiosks, like you see at the shopping centers, in the biggest, most successful hotels in around the whole world, actually,
yeah.
Well, several out of where they, for example, Caesar's Palace. He had magic shops in the Caesar's Palace, Frenchman's Reef in the Virgin Islands. These are hotels that are, the $1,000 a day suites kind of a hotel, but they're the hotels that carry conventions. So my brother doing these little magic kiosks, they had full-time magicians doing demonstrations, yep. And he sold coin tricks and card tricks and things of that to the conventioneers.
I remember, Bob, I remember that because I was a great customer of his over at Navy. Okay. He had one at Navy Pier.
Yes, he did. Yes, he sure did.
I loved that place. It was funny because I would take family to Navy Pier, and I would always, when you walk right into the Navy Pier at the main entrance, he was right there on the left-hand side. And I used to go in there all the time. They would show you the trick, and then you would buy the trick, and they would take you, and they'd open the door
in the back
room and show you how to do it. I loved that store. And I was a customer. I mean, I can't tell you how many other tricks. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, it was called Magic Masters.
Yep.
That was the name of the company. And I had actually, he had come to me. I assisted him. He had been having problems in the late 90s, 80s, early 80s, and I assisted him. I actually set up. It was actually my idea, my concept to do it. I didn't get involved with it, except for, now I'm going to get to the part that you're also even going to remember. I manufactured the thing called the spring animal, which was a little fur raccoon and skunks and rabbits. These are animals that are they're actually a puppet. They're a spring-loaded mechanism inside of a little these little animals that really look alive because they were made of rabbit fur, which, by the way, I bought from Europe and from France, actually. They were made completely out of rabbit fur and raccoon tails, and they looked like real animals, mm-hmm. and moved and jumped and ran around. And they were actually his biggest item that he had in terms of as a constant. So what happened, I get into the business of full-time manufacturing these. And because it was my own thing and nobody else in the world was manufacturing this, or anything even close to it. And of course we sold them to every magic company, that you could imagine. But then also I had my own, retail operations in, Six Flags amusement park and in the big amusement parks all around the place. And I was making an awful lot of money. It was about to make my first $1 million, personally with this. And I did a show in New York City, which was a marketing show, a merchandising wholesalers show. It's a gigantic thing in New York. By the way, I was based in Atlanta, Georgia. And all we did was showed our animals, and I had also professional magicians with me just to do the demonstration and all of that. And it was so great that everybody that saw it, if they had $20 in their pocket, they would buy one. That was it. There was no question about it. It was not like trying to sell it. It was just that good of an item.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to go through my crates looking for it because I know I've got it stored well with all the moves we did. And Sandy's like, "Oh, Jeff, you got to grow up."
Yeah, right. Well, of course, see, the big thing about my brother's operations with those was, like I say, it was in Caesar's Palace and all of these places. They were giant, and the intent was we would not go in at all to any place if it was not a real big convention traffic place. And when they do that, of course, you got all these young men with the businesses and all that, and their company spending tons of money, and actually the company, unfortunately, picking up the tab on these guys. And so when you would walk by and you'd see, and it was just coin tricks, card tricks, and things that you could freak out your buddy with, that kind of a thing. And so it was really great. It was not like some little old guy in a small town selling magical junk and fart cushions to the children. You know what I mean? That kind of novelty junk. It literally was high end stuff, et cetera, et cetera. Well, okay, so much for that. But so I do this show in New York, and it's a typical show where guys give you their business cards, and they'll say, or they either order right there for their business, or they give you a business card and they say, "Contact me," because we were doing giant costumes, big costumes for the stuff you see at the football games with the giant costumes. We did those types of costumes on special orders. Then we also did hats. I was manufacturing novelty hats with little animal faces on them and stuff like that. And then of course, our toy animal that was the primary thing. So what happened? I have this fella who I didn't remember him at all, of course, because when you're doing these, there was 35,000 buyers at this particular show in New York City over about 4-day period of time. And so we had tons and tons of business. So I've got all of these business cards. I get back home to when it was finished, back to Atlanta, and I'm going over the business cards, and I see this one and it says Vista. It was Vista Distribution USA, and on the back I had written down contact, and I had underlined it. Wants to purchase huge numbers of my product. That's relative to the conversation this guy obviously had with me. I didn't remember who, what, and where, but so I'm looking at it, and then it dawned on me that it was my address in Atlanta. Literally, in the industrial park where we had now put in a big 7,000 square foot facility, his address was my address. And I look at it again, and I said, this is like freak out, right? I said, what in the world? So hold on. So you're are you in a complex with a lot of different buildings? Yeah, right. Okay. It's what they call an industrial complex. Okay. Where you got printers and all kinds of things.
So he was like a neighbor, but he was in the same same area.
Well, yeah, but see, when I first saw it, because the way they do it, obviously, is the address is the same, and the only difference is a little thing that says Building 6
or
something like that.
Or Suite. Okay,
right. So, but I first looked, I said, "Whoa, what kind of a scam is this? This guy's got my address printed on his card."
Yeah.
So then I looked again, and I said, "Oh, wait a minute, this is the guys that I had watched about 3 weeks earlier move into." It was a brand new park. It cost a lot of money, and I had a big square footage there.
Yeah.
But we were doing so well, and I looked down and I said, wow. So then I said, oh, okay, it's that guy across the street. Literally, it was one across the street and one building down, and that's how close he was. I could see his offices from mine.
Sure.
And so I called him, and I called, and it goes through his front desk, and then I could see him pick up the phone. That's how close.
Hey, Bob, we're coming up on a hard break, and I think this is probably important for everybody to hear in its totality. So let's do this. Let's take a break. We'll take a 4-minute break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to hear about this gentleman. Well, I mean, I've never had that happen. I've had some strange things happen in my business career, especially with the software that I've written, where I've been given business cards and then I call them, they're fronts for businesses, and then I call them and then come to find out I'm talking to some major or some captain in the United States Army. I can share that with you guys a little bit later, but we're talking with our very special guest, Bob Fletcher. And wow, what a story! I could go see this in a movie theater so far. But we'll be back in a few minutes. Sit back. We got about 4-minute break, and when we get back, we're going to hear more from our good friend Bob Fletcher.
This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network. Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
That is right, Andrew. This is the Midnight Ocean Radio Show and podcast. I am your host, Jeff Norton. Join us live here every weeknight from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or on the web at www.themidnightocean.com. If you're joining us for the very first time, make sure you hit that YouTube subscribe button. That helps us out tremendously. If you're joining us on Facebook or seeing this on Facebook Live, please share the stream with your friends and family. Tell them about us. And also, you can follow us on Twitter. We won't spam you. The Twitter address is at the MN Ocean, MN as in Midnight Ocean. If you would like to text me directly in the studio with your questions, feel free to shoot me an SMS text message at 786-574-3652. That's 786-574-3652. I will respond back to you when appropriate. I appreciate it. If you have a guest suggestion or just want to talk to me directly, that's the best way to do it. And that is provided to us by Live Ninja. Great company, guys. Pretty cool technology. We're going to be, rolling out the web interface for that. So you can actually text message me right through the web, which will be pretty cool. Looking forward to that. Don't know how many text messages I'm going to get a day with the thousands of listeners, but, it'll be fun. Yeah, I told myself I would make myself accessible to you, our audience, our listeners. And, so we're doing that. But I want to bring back our guest, Bob Fletcher. Right before we went off the break, Bob, you were talking about how you ran into a gentleman who was in the same complex as you, and you thought that was weird. That is kind of bizarre. Of all the, all the places in the world, they just happen to land right next to you. Do you think that was coincidence, or do you think that was
No. As a matter of fact, it was not. I found out later I was specifically targeted, and exactly how that came about. But the targeting I was to find out later was because of the business I had just closed down, which was an international consulting, where my business card, as a matter of fact, doing that with the nation of Liberia, my business card included the direct phone number into the Washington, D.C. Liberian embassy. So that was literally my second phone number, where people could reach me at my office in Atlanta or leave messages for Mr. Fletcher at the embassy. Now, you want to talk about being able to open up doors. Yeah. You couldn't do that with hardly, I don't think, any nation of the world. But my good friend Abraham, who was the consulate general there for about 17 years prior to myself getting involved with him, and his wife, who was a duchess from the country of Gabon. So he was able to get away with it. He just did what he wanted to do, and he actually gave me the right to put the permission to put that number. That's anyhow. Apparently, now, and I'm going to expedite this next thing because we got to get through this. We got a lot of other real important stuff. I wanted you to kind of everybody to get a feel of who I was. I was just an entrepreneur, business guy, been in the music business and been in several different things. And lo and behold, I get this great toy of my own, and other things, and I manufacture them, my own little thing. Going to make $1 million with this thing. Yeah. And I run into this character, like you said, was directly across the street. I remember this, matter of fact, when he was moving into it, because this was an industrial complex, he caught our eye because the furniture and things that he was bringing in was like out of the White House. I mean, this was, extraordinary expensive stuff. And I remember my general manager at my toy company there said to me, "Holy mackerel, look at that. What the hell did they do over there? Because look at the furniture the guy's bringing in, Yeah. So it was that extraordinary. So the company name is Vista Distribution USA Inc. I go over there, make an appointment with him, go over, talk how extraordinary it was that we were right next to each other, and he explains to me that he owns several companies, which he did, and that one of them supplied cheap watches and miscellaneous novelty goods to the 7-Eleven type stores all over the United States, and that he wanted, and he put down, gave me an order for these novelty baseball hats that I was manufacturing, and also the toys, and some other item that we were also manufacturing, a little gimmick novelty thing, whatever it was, and but it was way over my head. I mean, it was thousands and thousands of dollars that I would have had to put out to even manufacture, and it was at that point in time for me, it was way over my head. And I said, "Whoa! I said, you're killing me." And I said, I was just planning to just run with this toy and go on television, do a commercial, and do a television, because it's a demonstration item and it sells 100 to 1 if it's demonstrated, and like on TV, we would have made a fortune. Mm-hmm. So he said, "I'll tell you what, if you're interested, I'll buy your company." And he said, he's going over my numbers and it's everything, but he says, "I'll buy your company, put X amount of dollars in, we'll go and we'll do a commercial, and you can also oversee my watch company, and so I'll pay you, you'll be vice president, we'll create a new corporation, blah, blah, blah." So within 30 days, we were sitting down with his lawyers in Atlanta. We put together the deal, and he gave me whatever, I don't remember what it was, $50,000 down or something like that. We transferred everything under his roof into the building where he was, and because it was right there, et cetera, et cetera. So in a short time, I've now merged my company with his corporation. Mm-hmm. He's put up money. We're now shooting, and we did complete a television commercial for the animal. But in a very short period of time, I realized that things are really strange around with this guy, for one thing. And by the way, his name is Gary Best, if I didn't mention that. To shoot to the chase, what happened was that I started getting, first off, we were getting telexes through my office, because that happened to be where the machine was. This is before computers, folks. Yeah. This is telex machines. And we're getting telexes from foreign countries, and they're in code. I can recognize that they're in code because it's things like addressed to Gary that says the 52,000 potatoes were arrived, okay, everything's fine, and they've been secured. And I'm thinking, what potatoes? What? We're not dealing with potatoes. What's going on here, right? Yeah. And this doesn't even have anything to do with the watches going into these, like I said, in these 7-Eleven convenience stores. Yeah. He's the one that put all this, where you go in and there's a $9.95 watch, mm-hmm. Digital watch, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, yeah. He was selling those by 100,000s. The numbers of those were tremendous. So those were, that part of the company was legitimate, and the same as mine was legitimate. And he had 2 or 3. He had a window company he bought while I was there, and that was legitimate window company, had been in business for a while. And but like with the watches, he had 100% guaranteed return when the batteries ran down. You see, we never think about this. When the batteries run down on the watches that are in the stores, they got to be replaced with watches that are running. Okay? So his deal, when the 7-Eleven type store contractual agreements was, he would send people in. He had regular people all over the United mm-hmm. States working for him. This is a big operation. And money was nothing. He had like, which I found out later on, like 25 major credit cards. But he also had like 6 passports. And he carried and cash, because he had plenty of cash, and he would carry this most often in a paper bag. You want to talk about, let's say, unnoticeable, unrecognizable situation. He would carry it in a paper. He had a briefcase, of course, but he always had a brown bag. The brown bag had probably, God knows how much potential funding with cash and the credit cards. All right, so that's a couple of strange things that happened. But then, of course, as I mentioned, telexes from around the world. And then I realized I would come into work, and the secretary out front would say, "Oh, Gary went to Europe yesterday." And I said, "Okay," and I'm thinking, what? I didn't know we were doing anything in Europe. And she said, well, he's going to Geneva. He'll be in Geneva for a couple of days, and then he'll be back. And he told me to give you this list of things. I said, oh, okay. So, again, this was in the embryonic status with this guy. I didn't, but it's building up. These things are looking strange. So then when he's back, we're getting generals, major generals coming in. A guy named General Heine Adderholt and a fellow named John Singlaub, both of them military generals. Mm-hmm. And he would have closed-door meetings with these guys, and then they would leave, et cetera, et cetera. But that was pretty regular. Now, these guys, I found out, of course, I didn't know at that time, these are the guys that ran the war in Vietnam. They were the primary generals that ran the Vietnamese War. Okay? The show that Mel Gibson did, the motion picture called Air America, they ran Air America. Now, for the people that are known up to that, Air America was theoretically the air service supplying weapons and movement of troops and things, but also drugs.
Yes.
The narcotics and stealing gold and moving gold cooperatively with the Prime Minister of South Vietnam. He was stealing huge amounts of physical gold bullion, and the Air America aircraft were flying it out, stashing it and smuggling it. All right. So this is what I finally found out. And at one point in time when I walked in, Gary was speaking, I walked into his office, Gary was speaking fluent Vietnamese or Chinese. And this is a little boy from Nashville, or not from Nashville, but from Tennessee, Marysville, Tennessee. It was something that normally you would not be fluent at. I also heard him speaking in reference to Iranian jets and the sale or the potential movement of jets that belong to the Iranians, which, by the way, just were some of the equipment that we have seen in this year that Obama cut the deal with the Iranians with the nuclear crap.
Correct.
These are those are the jets that Gary was talking about that were on the tarmac, parked in storage. We had confiscated them in the 80s, and he was talking about them. I'm talking with the physical engine numbers and part numbers of the jets, and talking about parts and things. So he was involved with covertly smuggling some of that stuff. I heard him talking about selling a $10 million aircraft and charging, and he was, it's mind-boggling figures. Mm-hmm. He had sold, I found out later, hundreds of helicopters to South Africa a few years earlier. And again, if you're talking 6 or 8, that's something. But if you're talking about 155 of them, that's a whole different thing. So finally, I went into Gary and I said, "What are you doing here?" Obviously, it was reaches the point where this is goofy. For a while, I let it go because I figured his company's other little separate things. Yeah. He's doing this and this and this, and that's okay. So, without batting an eye, he says, "We sell armament," which is an unusual word. That dialogue is a little different than.
Yeah, that's military speak. That's covert speak.
Yeah,
they don't.
Right.
They don't say, "Oh, we sell guns."
Yeah, it's not worth selling. Gums as he was some little jerk running a handful of AK-47s, something.
Yeah.
Right? We sell armament. And then, so he said, I want to bring you in on this. I need somebody, and here's where it surfaced. He says, you've been at the ambassadorial level in Africa, right? And so he knew about all of that, which I had not talked about. Other than I did have a letter up on my office wall from the embassy about, how wonderful my company was and all that stuff. I had that up on the wall, but I had never talked about it. And I said, well, yeah. And he says, you don't have any trouble dealing with the blacks in Africa, because again, have to remind you, he's an old Tennessee kid.
Yep.
So I said, no, of course not. And he said, well, we need somebody to go to Angola, because we're going to start doing business in Angola. And all you have to do is be an informational courier. You go over there, do shop and buy some toys, make it look like you're doing toy factory stuff. You'll meet with a guy, whomever we turn you to, give him information. He'll give you information. Just bring it back. We'll pay you $2,000 a trip, pick up your expenses. And of course, you still have your salary here, et cetera, and your involvement percentage piece here and everything else won't affect that. And we'll keep running the legitimate business, but this is what we'd like you to do. And I need you to get your passport next week, and because I'm going to want you to fly on over there and get started. If you're interested, I guarantee you that you will make more money than the President of the United States. And it'll be guaranteed forever. So anyhow, now I'm like, holy mackerel, what is this? Because you don't sell airplanes, you don't sell armament if you are not an armament. If you are not Boeing, you're not
McDonnell Douglas or
not McDonnell Douglas. Not So what is this? Who is this guy? What is this? So anyhow, I ended up saying, look, I'm out of here. I don't want to have anything to do with this. This is bullcrap. I said, I'm what I was and what I am, and I'm doing good, and all the money looks great. Obviously, I know he wasn't pulling my leg when he's talking about the funds. And I said, I'm out of here. And I said, I want you still owe me $250,000. I want to get paid, or I want to get my company back. And if and it was a simple thing. It was all contractual. So it was simple. He's either going to do that, pay me up in full. He still owed me about $250,000. Pay me up in full, or give me back my company. And if not, I'll just take you to court and I'll knock your brains out.
Yeah.
So what he did, literally sitting there at his desk, he reached inside of his coat pocket and pulled his hand back out in the shape of a gun, pointed it at my head, and pulled the trigger of the pretend gun, and said, if you say anything or do any legal action, this is what's going to happen.
Wow.
You're out of here. So I left, and I instantly, as a matter of fact, hired a private detective to keep an eye on the movements of what was going on there, and got with a lawyer friend of mine who I had known for 20 years, personal friend, and I spilled this out and gave the contract and all, and said, oh, well, this is going to be easy, we'll just sue him, and this is all, in and out stuff. But the bottom line was, his functioning, he was working right out of the White House. It was the Iran-Contra stuff. He was supplying the weapons to the Contras in Nicaragua at that time. That was the thing that turned into the Iran-Contra mess with Oliver North and all of the rest. So the people that are not that are young are not even going to know too much about that. But it was a giant scandalous thing, and and it involved drugs and weapons and everything else. So what had happened? So I saw on TV, all of a sudden, I'm watching the news. Now we've not gone any place with the legal action yet. because it was like literally within, I think 30 days, 20 days, something like that. Here comes the Iran-Contra scandal, and the president's on television and lying to the public, and that was Ronald Reagan, and he was saying that he didn't know who was doing what and this and that, but that there was people, illegally, citizens going over and also looking for prisoners of war that they were not supposed to, and he said, I don't know who they are, but we're going to get that because that's a terrible thing. They can't be doing this as private citizens. And then he also, of course, the Iran-Contra thing was there, and that was supplying the weapons illegally to the Contras and training them here in the United States and all that stuff. So I called the White House. And I still now realizing I knew what was going on with my case situation, but I had no idea still who he was, who Gary Best was. I didn't know what was going on. And I called the White House like a naive average citizen. And I said, hey, I know, first off, I know who's doing that POW insurgency stuff because he was in my office a month ago. And the guy that I was partners with was funding that. And that was another part of what they were doing. They were funding the little groups that were going over, and what they were doing actually was trying to locate prisoners of war that were still existing, believe it or not, in the 80s from the 1960s Vietnam thing. Okay, so he was involved with that, and I said, and they said, well, let me put you in with, and it was, I don't know at that time whether it was Senator Kerry, who's presently Secretary of State, or one other person, somebody else there at that time, and they said, they hooked me up with them. They were doing the inquiry, and, and they said, well, you're right in the middle of it. I just gave them a couple of names, I said, this name, that general, this general, that general. And they said, holy mackerel, who are you? What, So they said, you got to come to Washington. So now I became a federal witness in the Iran-Contra investigations. And from that point forward, without getting into all the rest of it, because I really want to cover a lot of other stuff, the bottom line was I became a witness in the Iran-Contra inquiries. Then additionally, I became a federal sworn witness in a $30 million racketeering lawsuit that had been filed by the Christic Institute, a religiously oriented group that relative, again, to arms, drug smuggling, and all of that, naming everybody that this was actually ahead of the Iran-Contra hearings, and it named everybody that was involved with the Iran-Contra stuff. And again, so here I go. I end up being a witness in that case as well, which is all, again, the same stuff. It's kind of repetitious. After doing that, all of a sudden I was a fixture in Washington, D.C. So I had senators and congressmen every time they came up with, over the next few years, when they came up with inquiries they wanted to do, whether it was CIA-connected drugs and things of that sort, Bob Fletcher was getting the phone call. So it went on and on from that, and I actually supplied information to probably 5 major inquiries of the Senate and congressional inquiries relative to the drugs, drug connections, and this, that, and the other thing. That was how I ended up supplying Sonny. Sonny was very upset once he got into Washington. Sonny Bono, being formerly a performer and entertainer, and then a mayor in California, and then a congressman for his district. When Sonny got up there, and that was when they had the church. I can't think of which. I'm sorry, I'm slipping on the name of it. Anyhow, they had the church that was an ongoing. Where they burned the church. What? I can't think
Waco.
Of the name.
The church.
The Waco. That's right, Waco, Texas.
Yep, Waco,
okay.
Texas.
Right. So they the government burned this church down and was shooting the people that were inside. It was outrageous.
It was David Koresh.
Koresh, right. And so after going through several of these inquiries and being involved with supplying information and doing investigations for Senate and congressional inquiries, which also included, of course, the Waco thing, Sonny, during the Waco inquiry, Sonny got so upset he actually broke into tears because they had literally murdered children.
Oh,
burned them alive inside this building. They blamed it on the guy, this Karish.
Correct, absolutely.
Karish, and they blamed it on him and everything else. He was a religious zealot.
Yep. Hey, Bob, let's do this. This is actually a great break for a segue because we're moving from one to the other. So let's take another 4-minute break. And then when we get back, we'll talk about the Koresh and Sonny and how all this all ties together. It's amazing when you go down the rabbit hole. It really, really is. But we're going down the rabbit hole today with our good friend Bob Fletcher as he lays this out. This is a pre-recorded show for obvious reasons, for security reasons and everything. So don't bother calling in. But when we get back, we're gonna tie this together with David Koresh and Sonny and how he got involved with our very special guest, Bob Fletcher.
This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network. Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
Yes, it is, Andrew. This is the Midnight Ocean radio show and a podcast. I am your host, Jeff Norton. Oh, we are starting to go down the rabbit hole. For those that don't know who are just joining us, we want to say first, thank you very much. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure that you press that ever most important button called subscribe. If you're joining us on Facebook Live, which we started broadcasting, this is a new feature for us. And as Facebook gets the kinks worked out, I'll tell you, if you're watching us on Facebook and you want to see us completely uninterrupted, you might want to kick over to YouTube and watch us there. I know Facebook is not in the video business, thus they're having a little bit of issues, but it's okay. We appreciate them allowing us to broadcast what we can live on their stream, but also make sure that you hit that share button. Tell your friends and your family about us. These are great shows. Our goal here at the Midnight Ocean is to bring non-mainstream ideas to the mainstream. And the only way we can do that is that you got to help us get out there to the mainstream. That would be your friends, your family, your coworkers. But you can also join us live, like I said, every 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time right here, or on the web at themidnightocean.com. Wow, we're definitely going down the rabbit hole with our very special guest, Bob Fletcher. And right before we went on the break, Bob, you were now talking about the David Koresh, the Star Davinian, the Davinian, and the whole fiasco there in Waco and the murder. And, let's call it what it is. It was a murdering of innocent children. It should have never have gotten to that point. I remember watching that, and I'll be the first one to tell you, when I saw that on TV, I was wrapped up in my neocon thing. And when I saw it, I was like, and I did not realize that there were children in that building. I did not realize, I thought, I believed what the lie was this was a radical group wanting to destroy America, and they were, whatever, devil worshiping, anti-America, and they were arms dealers. And that's what I believed. And like I said, that was when I was wrapped up in my neocon thing. And then when I grew up and I became awoke, I realized that they were a religious organization who had beliefs that were different than everybody else's, but they were harmless. They weren't, people have the right to believe what they want to believe in this country. If you agree or disagree with it, that's the tenet of our Constitution. You have the right to live your life free and clear of your government. And then to find out our government burned them and then parked a tank on the exit. And they knew that was the exit for one of the bunkers. They parked the tank directly on it so they couldn't get out.
Yep, they died.
Yeah, they killed them.
And they literally machine gunned ones that did try to get out of some of the burning buildings, which later on was proven with actual videotapes.
Yep.
But the reason I brought that up is that Sonny Bono was in the middle of that inquiry. Mm-hmm. And when he really realized that and all the inside parts of it, and he literally broke into tears, mm-hmm. Sitting at the desk. I mean, he just couldn't handle it. And from that point forward, again, I was in and out of the congressional buildings in the White House and all of that on a fairly regular basis with other senators and congressmen on congressional inquiries. And the way that works for the most part, you got the left and the right, basically, all right? And you always got the left trying to do numbers on the right and the right trying to do numbers on the left.
Correct.
And so anytime one group over here can get some nasty stuff in a group over there, they do an inquiry, and vice versa. And it's all political garbage. And, of course, so it's also, which I found out later, and, of course, they're all full of junk because nothing ever happens to anybody involved with these things. Once in a while, somebody has to do some time or something, but usually even when that happens, they actually send money. They'll put $10 million in some guy's checking account and say, hey, look, you're going to have to take the hit. We're going to have you do 6 months if you don't mind for doing this thing and that thing. Keep your mouth shut about all the other things that you know. We'll put $10 million in over here in Geneva Bank in Switzerland. and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
See, but nothing ever happened.
Yeah, Scooter Libby's not in the poverty house right now.
No, I wouldn't worry about Scooter Libby. And by the way, folks who don't know who he is, he's the assistant to the Vice President Dick Cheney, who yanked down billions of dollars after being involved with the takedown of the Twin Towers at the 9/11. Now, anyhow, he got in trouble for doing some little thing. He took it on the chin for somebody else, actually.
Yeah, well,
and
we all know who he took it on the chin for.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it was exposing a CIA agent, and actually he was not the one that did it. But anyhow, moving quite along, and I really have to move on with this stuff because I get hung up on little details, and
that's fine. So you and it's all up to you, Bob, because that's why we format our show the way it is. So we want to give you the maximum amount of time. But I know that you have physical. I mean, it is hard to talk for more than 2 hours. I know for a fact. I just got done doing an interview, and my throat is killing me from me doing an interview on another radio show for 3 hours. But I just want to let you know.
But the big point is, like I say, I get hung up because even all the little details are so amazing to the layman, so to speak.
Yeah.
And but then I was involved with so much stuff. Now I'm really talking 30 years now that I've been doing this. Which is kind of, and I'm one of the few guys that ended up doing it full time. You have an awful lot of people that, of course, did A, B, and C, but then on the side they got into this one or they got into that one.
Sure.
And one of the reasons I have such a tremendous grasp, I can see things or people or names and stuff, and I sit and I say, well, wait a minute now, something nobody knew about back 5 years ago that he was involved with, and then it clarifies a picture real quick.
Yeah.
Not too many people ended up in that situation, unfortunately, that I did. So anyhow, so much for that. So here we go. I'm going to get into Sonny's situation.
Yep.
So, I've done several things, several people, all of them really big, amazing situations. And somehow, I don't even remember how it happened off the top of my head right now, but Sonny was getting into it. Oh, and I know it was, what's her name, Waters, was doing a CIA, trying to make a connection of CIA to the drugs because of the black community in California.
Maxine Waters. Yeah, I remember Maxine Waters. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll never forget her. Okay, anyhow, she was screaming and yelling and trying to put things together. And it's strictly a political thing.
Yep.
And I had contacted her, and I was in L.A. at the time, and her offices were down there. And I said, listen, I have this and this and this, and I can show you where this came from. And see, the United States, during the Contra thing, they were trading, this is in Nicaragua, during the Iran-Contra, they were trading weapons going down for the revolutionary group, the Contras, and they were training the Contras. They were training them profusely in Arkansas. Bill Clinton was training them. Bill Clinton was a Democrat. The Republicans were in power. Bush and Reagan in power at that time. But they were kissing buddies. Oh. So forget that. There's no Democrat-Republican separation when you get into covert operations.
Correct.
All right?
Correct.
These guys are bad guys, left and right. One's as bad as the other. Don't ever fall in love with one or the other because you're going to be let down.
Well, Bush Senior just came out. Now he's pretty much on the downside. But before that, he came out and he talked about how him and Bill would fly together to do these disaster relief, for the Clinton Foundation, and how they were brothers from a different mother. The Clinton, they're cozy, and
they were that way during the elections when they were trying to cuss each other out.
You had the former CIA director, Vice President President Bush, eventually President Bush, and Bill Clinton, the governor of Arkansas, and during the time that, Bill Clinton was there in Arkansas, that was when, like you said, all this stuff was going on. And who do you think was running? Well, we know who was running it. And I think that Gary Webb, that's where I remember Maxine Waters, is that him, and I remember Gary Webb and Maxine Waters coming, working, because he's the one that really uncovered the drugs And the reporter, that uncovered the drugs coming out and the fact that it was going to the inner city and it was intentionally going there to.
Yeah. Well, unbeknownst to most of the world, I had already, everything that Gary did, and as a matter of fact, Gary went crazy because when he was writing his book, he was trying to get a hold of me and he couldn't for some reason. I don't remember why. But everything that was in his book, et cetera, I had already laid out in documented form to 2 or 3 major inquiries. See, but they only do stuff they want to that's going to help them this week, et cetera. So I had a whole bunch of material that I contracted, documentation, et cetera, and I contacted Maxine's, and she said, you need to get it to, bring it down here, bring it to the office. So I said, well, that this involves your party too, People, we don't care what way the chips fall, and that's what it, but that's baloney. That didn't happen. Yeah. And at the same time, Sonny had gotten a hold of me and had contacted, his people had contacted me, and so I worked with Sonny. Sonny wanted to do a congressional inquiry of his own relative to the material that I had supplied him, which was that actual videotape recording of the biggest Burmese drug supplier at that time, all right, who had an army of his own in the Burmese mountains of 40,000 soldiers, and was Kun Sa. And we have videotape of Kun Sa reading off the names of the American executive persons of our government that had set up the financing, the money laundering, and the sales of the drugs into the United States. And he pulled together one afternoon, brought together all of his executives, if you will. All right, you see these guys in thatched huts, all right, smoking whatever they smoke. But and what he was doing, he had contacted Lieutenant Colonel Bo Greitz, who was, by the way, he's Rambo. He's the guy they did Rambo movies based on. He was actually paid to give the general inside information on the Rambo movies. This is stuff that he literally did, the stuff that the original Rambo is shown in a movie, dropping down behind the lines in pitch black and sneaking into North Korean offices and stealing back a black box that was in one of our jets that they had shot down, and stole it back crawling through the mud in the jungle with a knife in his teeth and going in and taking out. That was the stuff that Bo really did. He was written up by General Westmoreland as the greatest soldier he had ever met, and Westmoreland being the head of actually 1.5, 2 wars, if you will. But anyhow, what had happened was Bo went in with his a camera crew, 3 or 4 guys, set up in the camp of Kun Sa in Burma, because Kun Sa wanted him to go back to the White House, and tell the White House that if the White House would assist him with money financing, that he would no longer grow any more poppies or any more narcotics on the mountainside. He would stop all of it. And he was like a 60% supplier, if you will, to the USA for dope. He would stop all of it. If we would help him, he would just start growing coffee, but that he had to have contracts and guarantees so that his people would not starve. And he said he don't smoke it. They don't do any of that crazy dope. They don't shoot up any of that. If he has somebody in his army that's found out to be utilizing narcotics, he kills them.
Yeah.
All right? Period. End of story. His people don't do it at all, but he was supplying it because his people needed the money.
Needed the food. They needed to feed themselves.
That was it.
Yeah.
So, but that's what brought us to the live footage that was shot that Bo passed on to myself, and I had that, and I said, listen, because here's what happens: they sit down and in English reading on their Chinese ledger books. They pull these big pages open and rolling these pages open, and his guys are reading in Chinese and they're saying it in English, obviously, the names like Richard Armitage, who was a guy over there at the embassy that had completely set up the money laundering operations and everything for him. And he named the people at the embassies, et cetera, over there that had been directly involved with the narcotics program for years. And they were talking about, how would he even get their names if it wasn't the truth,
And the fact that they're reading them out of ledgers, because any, like in court.
Stuff.
Yeah. I mean, in court documents, I've always been told you write everything down and you date it and stuff because the court's going to believe that over a person's testimony any day. The fact that there's a chronological order to it.
They had all of it. It was mind-boggling. And I passed the tape on to Sonny, and along with an awful lot of other material, tons of stuff. And so I had worked progressively with him for several months, and this was like in 97. And finally, it was mine, and there were some other people involved. It's just not just my stuff, but my stuff, I think, actually was my stuff was really the anchor because, hey, here's the biggest drug smuggler provider, grower, if you will, of the raw material, naming everybody and telling you what aircraft they use and how. Forget it.
Yeah, he's laying the case out. But now I gotta ask: do you still, in your possession, have this movie?
Oh, it's on a DVD.
It's on the DVD, and that's one that someone can get. All right, so I'll make sure that we put that on the website.
Another thing, We'll
put them all on the DVDs.
I'll let everybody know how you can get my report.
So this stuff still exists, and you can. Oh my goodness. I'm buying.
And I did an entire DVD. As a matter of fact, let me not jump there yet.
Yeah.
All right, so this was part of what I supplied Sonny with. And again, I was working with him, cooperating with him for a whole period of 6, 7, 8 months. And then finally I get a call in December of 97. And, it's Sonny's administrative assistant runs the office. He says, Bob, I got great news. We've got the inquiry has been approved as a congressional inquiry. To top it off, we have gotten subpoena powers so that if we subpoena somebody to talk and they don't, we can actually put them in jail.
Yeah.
All right. Now they don't do that in Congress and Senate inquiries.
Yeah.
Or when they do it, like I said earlier, nothing much usually happens. But nobody utilizes subpoena powers, and that's what he had set up. I blew my mind. I said, great. What did we schedule-wise? And he says, in about 10 days, Sonny's going on the Christmas holidays. Everybody's taking the Christmas. Will be about the 15th of January. That's literally 20 days, so to speak, from when I had received the phone call. And we need to get you into Washington. Because we want you're a primary character in this thing. And if you're ready to still do it, and I said, absolutely, send me the tickets, I'm over there. So I was excited. It was great. And and this was mind-boggling. And it literally would have impeached the president. This is how strong this stuff was. This would have made the Iran-Contra inquiry look like it was some kind of a children's program on TV compared to what we were about to do. And I was just elated. And what was funny, I was 6 months earlier, June of that year, I had been blown out of bed at 1:30 in the morning. And we couldn't quite figure out what it was that took place. But I had actually been hit with one of these laser type, microwave type of a weapon that had actually exploded my shoulder. Now, what it was supposed to do was put me into a convulsion and actually blow up my heart, if you will, or kill me with a heart attack. That's what these do. The guy recently last year that Jesse Ventura had on as a witness to the particle beam weapons.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I'm going to have a DVD on that. But the particle weapons, this fella was one of the guys that helped create it.
Yep.
They shot the show with him, and 24 hours later, he was hit with the same weapon.
Heart attack, yeah.
And it killed him.
Yep.
He went into had a seizure and fell down in his kitchen floor, and his heart.
I remember that. I remember that show, watching that for Jesse's show that he did. Yes. I remember them talking about. I remember. Yes,
Yep. And it's the exact same weapon that I had been struck with, apparently. So that was in June of 97, June of 97. Unbelievable. That's the one that's never been repaired, and it's terrible. My left arm is completely missing the ball of my shoulder and the top part of my bone.
So
bone.
You were late. All right. So let's get this back. So the audience, let's describe this.
Sure,
and if it's painful for you to describe, let me know. So you're laying in bed.
Sound asleep, and something. I mean, did it physically move you, or did your shoulder just explode? I went into convulsions.
Okay. So
I never had anything like that. Don't have any epilepsy. Nothing.
And
like
your
that.
wife, obviously, or
my wife next to me dialed 911 immediately.
Sure.
It continued, and it went extraordinarily long period of time.
Sure.
And it stopped only when the police and the ambulance were coming down the road. As soon as they were audible to her, not to me, I was unconscious, audible to her. As soon as she heard the sirens, the convulsion stops.
Okay.
I come to. I said, what the hell's going on? And I got I had the ambulance guy there and the police and everything else, and trying to, they took me off.
Sure.
And the only problem was, now you have to understand, now I didn't leave the bed or anything like that, and I never had anything like that in my life.
Yeah, you're laying in bed, convulsions.
Sound asleep, boom, it just comes, starts, goes, and it continues until the ambulance and police are so close they might have come up on the guy.
And so your shoulder, your socket, all that's physically blown apart?
Physically exploded into pieces with no external injury.
What does your orthopedic surgeon say?
What the hell happened?
Okay. That's what I wanted. I mean, did he give you any kind of...
They never figured it. See, they never figured it out. And it didn't dawn on me.
Yeah.
And here's what's funny or amazing. I was literally in the middle of not only helping Sonny, but I was producing a DVD on exotic weapons. All right, literally at that time, doing the research and laying down the film of an exotic weapons DVD. So, but it never dawned on me. Okay, until I got down there and they looked at it and they X-rayed and they said, the top of your arm is blown, is shattered. What did you hit? What did you do? And I said, nothing. I was on my back, and when I came to, I was still on my back right there. Didn't even hit anything. Was laying on the bed. Didn't fall off the bed. Didn't fall off of a 3-story building. He said, your shoulder looks like it's been hit with a sledgehammer. But bear in mind now what I'm going to say. No external injury whatsoever visible. End of story.
Sunburn, bruise?
No, nothing. Not a damn thing. They could not repair the shoulder properly. They put in an implant which was screwed up by the guy that put it in. It had to be taken out, and my arm literally is broken off with no ball, no top of my arm, and it's hanging completely free from my body. There's no skeletal connection whatsoever for the last 30 years, 20 years now. Okay, end of story for that part of it. But now when we got back, And again, progressively, a lot of guys saw this, specialists and all that, and they said, this is, I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, I mean, nothing. I mean, I know shoulder surgeries because I've had two of them. I've had both the same shoulder replaced or repaired because one was an injury and then I re-aggravated it in a car race. So I know. I know shoulder injuries and I know how they work and I know how you do them and stuff. And I empathize and sympathize with you because I know the pain involved as well. So let's, Bob, we got a quick break and we'll take a quick break. We'll come back and hopefully we'll be able to button this up with Congressman Sonny Bono. And then, we'll just kind of see where the night takes us. But we're talking with our very special guest, Bob Fletcher. Wow. This is, I'm buying DVDs. I got to see this for myself. This is incredible. And I highly recommend, guys, anybody that's listening to the show, you got to get out to Bob's site. And we're going to have links to his DVDs and everything on our site. And you got to see this because the more eyes, the more we can uncover the truth. But we're going to get back to the truth here in a few minutes with our very special guest, Bob Fletcher.
This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network. Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
That is right, Andrew. This is the Midnight Ocean Radio Show and a podcast. I am your host, Jeff Norton. Join us here every weeknight from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're on the web at www.themidnightocean.com. If you're joining us for the very first time on YouTube, thank you. Make sure you hit that ever most important button called subscribe. We'd appreciate it very much. If you're listening to us on Facebook Live, please make sure that you share this show with your friends, family, other Facebookers out there. I would appreciate that as well. And if you are a member of the Midnight Listener group, that's midnightlistener.com. I'll tell you, there's perks to being a member. This show here actually is recorded. We had to do it for security reasons because of the nature of the topics that we're talking about on the show. So this is actually a recorded show. But if you were a Midnight Listener, you would have access to the show as it was live. There are perks to being a member. And we do some shows during the day ahead of time, and we do some shows on the weekends. And like I said, if you were a member of the Midnight Listener group, you would have access to these shows as they were happening. You could participate live. There are benefits to being a member and everything. So without haste, I want to get back because I am just intrigued. I don't want to take breaks, but that's how we pay the bills around here. That's how we keep the lights on. But Bob, you have me, man. I don't want to take a break. I just wanted to talk. I can talk with you for hours about this is scary stuff.
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah, sure.
Oh, okay. I thought I had problems with the phone.
Oh, no.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, no. And you know what? I anticipated that. That's why we're doing what we're doing, right? So they don't know. Because I've had a couple guests on here where I know for a fact we were being messed with. I know for a fact. Well,
they mess with me when I'm producing stuff on my. I actually had an expert came in about a year ago. I was having so much difficulty, and he ran a scan. He said I had been hacked over 2,000 times. What they were doing was just punching in and screwing up my computer.
Yeah.
And dropping off. Well, anyhow, believe it or not, that's amazing.
Well, the nice thing is, like with us, we have Barracuda firewalls. And so coming into the studio, and I have Barracuda, who it's a contract. I have a contract with them, and they manage our firewalls. And they will call me or they'll shoot me a message telling me to say, "Hey, look, you're getting a denial of service attack. Here's where and then they will stop and they say, "Oh, we can't give you that IP address," and that's code word for it's coming from the government. Because they have contracts too, but they always, without a doubt, they'll always call me and say, "Yeah, you got a denial of service attack," and they know, and then they'll say it's coming from, and then the guy will say, "Well, I can't read that IP address to you." Right. Well, yeah, so we know they mess with us all the time.
All right. Anyhow, yeah, it was extraordinary. It cost me a fortune last year.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving right along, where were we anyhow?
We were talking about Congressman Bono.
Oh, my shoulder and all that.
Well, we were talking about your shoulder, yeah, but I'm just, oh my goodness, I'm just sitting there going.
Well, let me give you the last upshot on that situation. And so at one point in time, now I was at a veterans hospital, and they were military guys, mostly, doctors. Mm-hmm. And at one point early in the when everybody was trying to figure out whatever happened, this is like, and I said, well, some of the work that I do, I said, it's possible. I don't want to talk about it too much because it's, everybody's, oh, he's nuts, paranoid, wacko type thing. And I said, it's possible I was hit with a microwave/laser type of a weapon, because I also knew from studying Nikola Tesla stuff, he had actually done a presentation. He did many of them live at like colleges and universities and stuff when he was alive, and doing all the electronic stuff. And he used to light himself up and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And there was literally a one presentation he did where he said, now, I can run this X numbers of voltage through me, et cetera, and it won't bother me at all, and it can actually, he would set up receivers from two sides of him and run the power from his left fingers out to his right fingers, off his hands, jumping to these parabolic receivers and all that stuff. And he did this extraordinary, crazy stuff. But he knew what he was doing. But he said in one particular presentation, he said, the only problem is if, in fact, the incoming voltage or wattage or whatever enters your body but exits through a solid mass of the bone like your shoulder, and literally said that. He says it could explode your shoulder.
Oh, absolutely.
I thought that was rather bizarre kind of a thing. But anyhow, so I had mentioned this to the surgeon, one of the surgeons, and he said, "Do you sleep next to a window?" And I said, "Well, a 6x8 sliding glass door that then goes out onto our garden, right next to it." Mm-hmm. And he says, "Was it over?" I said, "Well, no, it's June, so it was open. We didn't have the shades pulled on it at all, any curtains pulled on it." So and he said, "Well, that's easy." So when I went home from the hospital that day, I went back into the bedroom, pulled open the shades, pulled open the curtains, laid down exactly where I was laying, and put my other arm, my right arm up, pointing, because my left arm was immovable. I put my right arm up, aiming out from the bed where I was, out through the garden. And I had to call my wife in, and I said, when did the top of our wooden fence get broken off? And she said, "Oh, I don't know. That was all right, a couple of weeks before before the problem." And I said, "Well, let's go out and look at this. Look what we've got." And son of a gun, there was the top of a 5-foot fence had been broken off, direct line with, so somebody on the other side of the fence had broken it inward. And it was inward. The piece was laying down there. Had broken it inward. It gave a perfect angular shot through the glass doors to potentially hit me. Then I let all that go for a while. I didn't tell much. I was doing speaking engagements and all of that, and I never brought that up much because I didn't want to get in that. Oh boy, geez, Fletcher's getting shot with electronic guns. Oh, he's ready for the cage. And until I really kept it very laid back. Although I must say it totally changed my lifestyle at that time, because I was doing speaking engagements all over the United States, and I could no longer do it because I couldn't do the travel. And so that completely unplugged me, so to speak, from that part of my life, doing the appearances, and I was all over the country at that time, 2-3 times a month. But so anyhow, that changed that. But again, bearing in mind, now this is June, June '97, working with Sonny. I get the call. Sonny's gone on Christmas holidays. He'll be back. We got this fantastic inquiry, is ready to go. It'll probably be about the 15th of January of '98, in a couple of weeks. And he'll be back, and we'll open it up. Are you going to be there? I said, I'll be there, and that was that, and I was elated.
Yeah.
10 days after that call, I'm watching television, and they said Sonny Bono died on the ski slopes. Now, like you mentioned, and it's funny, for the very first second, I thought, oh my God. And I did it, and then my second thought was, he's been hit. There's no accident. He didn't. And like you mentioned earlier, Sonny, by the way, for the people nobody would know this, Sonny was good enough as a skier to be a professional instructor.
Yes.
That's how good Sonny was on the ski slopes. And so I instantly made calls, and one thing led to another. And I had been working with, as a matter of fact, Sonny's mother, her lawyer, and I contacted her. First, I tried to do it myself. I wanted to get the autopsy.
Mm-hmm.
And they were not releasing the autopsy. Nobody could get it. Then I contacted my friend, a lawyer for Sonny's mother, and she said Sonny's mother was not able to get it. And I said, "Oh, wait a minute, well, you know." So finally, it took me a long time, but finally, I did get the complete copy of Sonny's autopsy, and basically, and now I have. I'm going to let everybody know how to get all these, but I have one entire DVD that I did on Sonny's murder that explains the whole thing, shows the autopsy and everything else. The autopsy is outrageous because on the first page of the autopsy, it should have been enough to red flag that he had been murdered. Or at least that there was something strange about his death. They claimed he had hit a tree head on, and he was in 20 to 30 feet or more off of the ski path. Mm-hmm. He was in the tree line, inside the tree line. Now, they claimed he had hit it about 35 miles an hour head on a tree and had knocked his... It caused terrible brain damage, and he was dead. Okay, I've gotten live footage of the location where it was done with the blood still in the snow and all the rest of that. Is completely garbage. Sonny, first off, he had no injuries to his hands, which means he did not put his hands up in front of his face when he was about to have his head go directly at 30 miles an hour into a tree.
Or put his hands out.
No, he did not try to protect himself.
Yeah.
Now, that's an instinct.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not something that you have to plan or think about or be trained to do. It's an instinct. If I throw a ball at your face, you're not going to just stand there and watch it come.
Correct.
All right. End of story. Then it goes on and on and on. I like to say the complete thing on it, but the autopsy describes his wounds, which was on the right side of his head, right side of his frontal forehead. The wounds, the two primary wounds, which happened coincidentally to be the exact same shape. They're concave into his head, the same shape and size of the barrel of a .45 pistol. He had been pistol whipped to death. He had been hit probably only twice, probably by a left-handed person because it was on the right side of his face, his head, up on his head. That's where the blood was. That's where the only wounds were. Only wounds were. In the first paragraph, it indicates in the autopsy that in the progress of undressing him, that he had 4 shirts on. He had a jacket on, first off, a ski jacket. Then he had a shirt under that. Then he had another shirt, and then he had an undershirt. And, typical layering for doing a ski up in the top of a very cold mountain. The first paragraph says that all 4 of the shirts and the jacket included were soaked through with blood on the back. He had no injuries on his back, and certainly not enough injury on his back to have soaked through 4 layers of clothing. All right? Now, so the obvious thought is, well, gee, how did that get on her? Then they say, well, they had transfer of blood maybe when they were... No. Soaked through. What that was, more than likely, is he was hit by 2 guys. I think he had scheduled to rendezvous with somebody that nobody knew about, probably to supply him with some inside information to add to the investigations we'd been doing for 9 months. All right? Maybe give him some documentation or whatever the heck it would have been. That would have worked. And so Sonny had rendezvoused with somebody at the point of the ski slope. 2 guys. One guy grabbed him from the back, held his arms back, and the other guy hit him a couple of times in the front of his forehead and killed him. They then dragged him up to the tree and put him up with one arm up around the tree, which also was incongruent. You would not have your one arm up around the tree like you were hugging it, so to speak. And again, no injuries on his hands or arms at all. And here's another one of the major points, and then this is the technical part of the autopsy. Absolutely zero damage to his neck. Internally, etc., nothing. No damage whatsoever to his neck. He hits a pole, or he hits a tree at 35 miles an hour, bad enough to kill him, doesn't put his hands up to protect himself. Instead, he puts his arm up around to hug the tree, and ski poles still fastened to his hands, both his skis still on his feet. And by the way, there was a 12-inch diameter tree in front of, laying down, broken down on the ground, what he would actually have hit prior to hitting the tree. It was almost a physical impossibility to hit the standing tree where he was. And then it goes on and on. There's all kinds of other things.
All right. So I'm going to ask some questions here because I think this is critical.
Go ahead.
When no one saw Sonny hit this tree.
No.
When was it that he was out skiing? Was it early in the morning, late at night?
It was It was in the morning, and they didn't look for him for about 8 hours.
So they didn't look. Okay.
His wife did not report him missing for about 8 hours.
And so and then they found him off the main ski course. Off
the way deep inside the tree line, what they call the tree line. Mm-hmm. Again, the big point about that is that it's impossible to get any high speed in the tree line because
I'm a skier because they don't. That's not plowed. It's not plowed.
And when you look at the videos that I got of where it happened and everything, right away you said, "No, get out of here."
You can't go 30, because you got trees and stuff. And then that was going to be my So from the way, I'm reading, I'm listening to what you're saying, and the way I'm looking at it is, I think he was actually murdered somewhere else. And
no, it would have been too much to let's say, in order to do that, in other words, to transport, let's say, here's what happened. He had told his wife, they were up at the top of the hill.
Okay.
He told his wife, and he had, matter of fact, one or two of his kids with him. He told his wife, I'm going to go on by myself, and I'll meet you down at the bottom. See?
Okay.
So that was that. So then he just took off. This is where I said he did. He took off. He saw him going on down, started down the hill. See? All right. And going on down the hill. Halfway down, 2/3 or whatever it was where he was found. When they did find him, and it wasn't until like 4 o'clock. It was starting to get dark, actually, at the time, by the time they found him. She had waited a long time, about 8 hours or something like that, before even reporting it, that he had not made it back down to the chalet, down to the restaurant or where it was he was supposed to meet her. I think that he had prearranged and said, "Hey, all right, I'll meet you. I don't want anybody to see anything. And I'll meet you at this X amount down, this certain part of the hill. I'll meet you down there. Give me what you got me and what you have for me, and then we can part ways and blah, blah, blah." That's my assumption, okay? But in terms of medical, again, going over, it's so terribly specific, talking about, and the only place where snow and debris was found on the body was in his collar. That's when they dragged him.
When they dragged him, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I contacted, and as a matter of fact, I also contacted the guy that had done the Kennedy shooting stuff, the autopsy expert.
Okay.
I contacted him and sent him all of my information, and he said, "I think you're right on," and he wanted to get into a little more stuff, but whatever that was not available. Nothing's been made available. The sheriff down there is the coroner. Now, the sheriff is not the medical guy that does it, but he is the official coroner. And I've talked and so communicated, and he's written back to me, et cetera, relative to it. been the sheriff for about 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's also an area there where they said that if you drained, let me put it this way, police corruption is rather profuse, and they said, somebody told me down there, if they ever drained the lake there at Reno or Tahoe, they'd had so many skeletons down there it looked like a burial from the ancient days. At the bottom of the lake there.
With the fact that you said the sheriff is a coroner, that's kind of unusual because
that's why I mentioned it. Why I mentioned it. And he's still in there, and he has not cooperated with me at all. Because I might also add that his wife was totally non-cooperative, and of course took over his position as a congresswoman.
Yeah.
Read my lips. Okay. And they were about to, Sonny was about to file divorce papers on her, according to his mother.
Oh.
That was pending. And very short period of time after Sonny was put in the ground, his home was sold for multi-millions, and insurance was taken care of, and his stuff was, she ordered up a huge dumpster, the big box dumpsters that they drop off at a place where it's like a construction site kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she took everything that was his and threw it in the dumpster.
Not a typical grieving widow.
Not what you call your normal grieving.
Yeah, that's. Yeah. And
okay.
I did want to circle back to the sheriff, because what I find the sheriff being a coroner, that is so unusual, because did you know that the coroner is the only person that can arrest a sheriff? Because a coroner is elected as well.
Chances of that's going to be difficult.
I know, but what I'm saying is that, when a sheriff is corrupt, the coroner is the only person who has the legal authority to arrest a sheriff in a corruption case. It has to go, the coroner's the guy that does it because of the way the constitutions are set up and stuff, because an elected official, sheriff is elected, a coroner is also an elected official, and he's the next in line. So, but he also the coroner has the ability to make, to charge or to charge someone with a crime. But it's just strange that you have your sheriff is also the coroner, so the sheriff is completely, he's insulated. There's no one of legal authority that can challenge him except the coroner, and if you're the coroner, okay, who's going to challenge you? There's no one legally that can challenge you.
A couple of other strange things, and then we'll move on.
Sure.
His hat was missing, and his glasses were missing, and a couple other things. One piece of jewelry was missing. The hat, you see, the hat was a big deal. I mean, it's just not listed on the inventory. See, and the hat would have been a big deal in this case, because it simply would have showed, is there deeply embedded, there was no tree fibers or anything of that sort in any of the wounds whatsoever. All right. So, but then you say, oh, well, that's logical, because he was wearing a knit hat. Well, the knit hat's disappeared.
Well, where's the knit hat? Yeah.
Yeah. And probably, and again, this is, I suppose I shouldn't even say this, it's just a wild assumption, But what happened was that when Sonny was grabbed by, let's say, the actor number one, he grabbed him and held his arms back. All right, typical thing. Sonny would have struggled, and the guy got a bloody nose. See, that's where all that blood flow was that soaked through the jacket and the shirt and everything. Now, they're all long gone, so there's no testing on that. End of story for that idea. I'm thinking that when this happened, struggle, boom, the guy gets a bloody nose, he bleeds on the back, and Sonny gets hit 1, 2, smack a couple of times. It literally describes and dimensional and everything, indented in the skull. You don't get two individual indentions the size of the barrel of a .45 pistol or even any type of pistol like that from a 19-inch circular tree. I mean, okay.
That's true.
But so the next thing obviously would be, well, let's look at his hat to see about the tree residue, because if it was tree residue on it, obviously it would have to really be embedded pretty seriously.
Correct.
To have him that kind of a, indented in his head.
Yep.
But the hat's gone. It's a knit hat, and his glasses were also gone.
Sure.
That may actually never have been even broken. See, they may have just been knocked off.
The physical evidence.
But they're gone.
Wow, Bob, we unfortunately got to take a break here, pay some bills. Are you okay to go another segment?
I'm rocking and rolling.
You're rocking and rolling. All right, man. I'm caught up. You got me. I'm
right.
I'm definitely I'll be ordering Sandy, I've already told her to get the credit card out. We're going to be ordering these DVDs because these things are just fascinating. But we're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk with our very good friend, Bob Fletcher. Wow. It is never what it seems. No wonder most Americans don't